All right, so you wanted to get into this whole Mysterium thing,
Yeah.
how it shapes the way we see the world, even ourselves.
Right.
We're going deep here, folks. Philosophy, mythology, psychology, touching on stuff from sources like this excerpt, Disciples of the Mysterium.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Even a few classic films, to spice things up a bit.
Always helps.
The whole point of this deep dive is to see how this concept of Mysterium, it's like a filter on our consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Messes with how we understand things, the world, ourselves, the whole deal.
It's kind of wild how this source flips the script on progress,
What do you mean?
Well, it starts off talking about how ancient cultures, they had this whole idea of a golden age.
Right, like a paradise.
Exactly, where humans were like in tune with this fundamental truth, source of life, all that.
Okay.
Then, bam, something happens. We lose that connection. Like, think about Atlantis.
Oh, yeah.
The story told by those Egyptian priests. Plato wrote it down later, right?
Right.
Classic example of that whole fall from grace thing.
So the ancients, they're looking back at a lost paradise.
Right.
But us today, we're more about paradise in the future.
Exactly. Like in that movie, Network.
Oh, yeah.
That character who's all about corporations and technology leading us to this utopia.
Okay.
But even in that vision, something's lost, man. Individuality. The crazy thing is, both of these views, the past golden age, the future utopia,
Right.
could be expressions of the same thing. The Mysterium.
So we've swapped worshiping gods for worshiping technology?
Kinda, yeah. But the pattern's the same. That's what's interesting.
I'm following you.
The text, it describes this Mysterium as like a mental construct born from trauma.
Trauma, like real trauma.
Yeah, it's talking about this huge event way back when.
Like a historical event.
That's what they're suggesting, yeah.
Yeah.
They call it the age of catastrophe.
Whoa.
And it wasn't just an external thing. Internal, too. Like, it split human consciousness,
So, like, our minds were trying to cope with all this chaos, and the Mysterium is what came out of it.
That's the idea, yeah. It's driven by this longing for paradise, wholeness, all that. But deep down, it's fueled by distrust of nature. Like, we can't handle it.
This is heavy stuff.
Right.
So how does this Mysterium, this thing in our heads, how does it actually change how we see the world?
I imagine a mask, right?
Okay.
We're all wearing it, with two different lenses that distort our view.
Distort how?
We start seeing mind and body as separate, like dualism.
Like, I think, therefore I am.
Exactly, Descartes, right? But even him, in his search for absolute certainty, he relied on his own Mysterium, his belief in a separate God.
So even when we're trying to be all logical and rational,
Right.
this Mysterium could be there messing with our thoughts.
Exactly. Shows how deep this kind of thinking goes,
Yeah.
It's not just the beliefs themselves, it's the structure underneath it all.
That's kind of a scary thought.
It is.
So we're all walking around with these Mysterium masks on, seeing things wrong.
In a way.
Where do we even go from there?
Well, the text, it points to the decline of traditional religious mysteria.
Right.
As those systems lost their grip, something else stepped in. Technology.
So instead of finding meaning in religion, we're looking for it in our phones.
There's this quote from Max Frisch. Really nails it, he says. Technology, the knack of so arranging the world that we don't have to experience it.
Wow.
Makes you think, right?
So we're building this buffer between us and, like, actual life.
And by doing that, we push ourselves further from nature, from just being, we become more and more reliant on this external stuff, this constructed reality.
So technology, it becomes the new Mysterium.
You could say that.
A false promise of, like, control and understanding.
That's the argument, yeah. And this is where the text brings in Heidegger.
Okay.
And his whole Dasein thing, being in the world. It's a big contrast to all those philosophies that get lost in abstract thinking.
Like he's saying, stop overthinking it, just live.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Heidegger saw technology, even science in many ways, as distractions.
Distractions from what?
From the truth of existence, just being. He even had this term, Das Man.
Das Man.
To describe the person who gets lost in all that, loses touch with their true self.
Hold on, I need a sec to process that.
Take your time.
So Heidegger's saying real understanding, it doesn't come from thinking about life.
Right.
But from actually experiencing it, being in the moment.
That's the core of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's pretty radical, right? Because our world is all about distractions, escaping the present.
It's true, it's everywhere.
It is.
It's easier said than done, Distractions are everywhere, and we're all just trying to keep up with life.
It's the challenge, for sure. Breaking free from Das Man, getting back to that realness of being.
So what does Dasman even look like in our lives? How does it play out?
Think about going through the motions,
Yeah?
Like you're on autopilot, not really in control. That's Das Man at work.
Okay.
And it often ties into wanting approval, achievements, fitting
All
in.
that stuff that feeds the Mysterium.
Exactly. It's connected to Baudrillard's concept of simulacra, right?
Where we're drowning in copies without originals.
Yeah, and we end up becoming copies ourselves.
Yikes.
It's this push to be all the same, this global village where everyone thinks the same.
You lose that unique spark.
You do. That direct experience of the world.
So we're not just disconnected from nature, but from ourselves, too.
It's a bit bleak, yeah. But there is a way out. It's just not a quick fix.
What is it?
It's an individual journey, unlearning all those layers of conditioning that blind us.
Unlearning. Where do we even start?
It begins with recognizing the individual as the gateway to truth.
Wait, so you're saying my own experience is more important than what everyone else says?
It's not about rejecting knowledge, it's about understanding its limits.
Okay.
Jung has this great quote. He says, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart."
It's about trusting my gut, my own way of seeing things.
Exactly. Looking inward, not just outward.
Okay.
Really listening to that inner voice, the one that gets drowned out by all the noise.
I like that. It's like waking up from a dream of just fitting in.
He also said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Powerful stuff.
That is powerful.
It reminds us the answers we're searching for, they're often right there within us.
So how does this connect to actually dissolving this mysterium? Waking up to who we really are?
Think of it like peeling an onion.
Okay.
We have to shed all that conditioning, all the programming that keeps us trapped in this illusion of separateness.
Like we've built walls around ourselves and now we got to take them down carefully.
I like that analogy.
Thanks.
It's about uncovering and letting go of all those beliefs and patterns that don't serve us anymore. It's about finding that true self that's always been there, buried under all the layers.
That makes sense, but it also sounds pretty tough.
It is a challenge, but it's incredibly freeing too. And it's important to remember, dissolving this mysterium, it's not about ditching technology or reason completely.
Right, not becoming some hermit who hates technology.
Exactly. It's about seeing how they shape how we see things, how they can become tools of the mysterium if we're not careful. It's about using them consciously, not letting them use us.
So it's more about changing how we relate to tech and reason, not getting rid of them altogether.
Exactly. Finding that balance between our inner world and the outer world.
And that ties back to what we were talking about before, right? Connecting with the nature, ourselves, the present moment.
Absolutely. Those are the keys to unlocking real freedom, breaking free from those illusions that keep us trapped.
Okay, I'm seeing the path a bit clearer now.
Good.
We've got the problem, this mysterium, messing with our lives.
Right.
And we touched on the solution, dissolving it, waking up.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? What are the steps on this journey?
Well, that's where things get a bit more tricky.
How so?
The text, it doesn't give us a step-by-step guide.
Oh.
And I think that's on purpose.
Because it's different for everyone.
Exactly. No one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay, so what do we have?
There are these common threads, principles that pop up. Yeah, they can point us in the right direction.
Okay, I'm listening.
One big one is self-awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing the mysterium in our own lives. Seeing those thought patterns, beliefs, assumptions, all that stuff that shapes how we see the world.
So paying attention to that inner voice, those stories we tell ourselves.
Yes. And being willing to question them, challenge them, especially the ones that aren't doing us any good anymore.
So it's about seeing how we've been conditioned, how we've been taught to think and act,
Right.
and then choosing a different way.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with our values, with what truly matters to us. Living authentically instead of performing for others.
I love that, living authentically. But what does that even look like in real life?
Well, it varies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are common themes. Connecting with nature, spending time alone, being mindful, being creative.
Things that quiet the noise so we can hear ourselves better.
Exactly. It's not about doing them perfectly. It's about making them a part of our lives. It's about being present, engaged in the moment, instead of chasing after some future goal.
It's like we've become so obsessed with achieving, with building up this image of ourselves, that we've forgotten how to just be, to enjoy the simple things.
And that's the irony, right? The more we chase happiness, the further away it gets.
It's true.
Real happiness, real fulfillment, it comes from within.
From being in tune with ourselves.
Yeah, from aligning with our true selves, with the natural flow of life.
So it's not about reaching some perfect state of enlightenment.
No, it's about the journey, the ups and downs, the challenges, the moments of clarity, and even the moments of confusion.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the whole thing.
The whole messy process.
The whole messy, beautiful process. Trusting that we're exactly where we need to be in each moment.
This is really resonating with me, but I gotta be honest, there's still a part of me that's like, really? If it's that simple, why are so many people struggling?
Well, like we've been saying, the Mysterium, it's a powerful force.
Powerful how?
It's woven into our culture, our systems, our thinking. It doesn't let go easily.
It's a battle, in a way.
You could see it that way, yeah. But it's not a battle fought with aggression. You know, it's fought with awareness, with compassion, with a willingness to let go of those old patterns that hold us back.
So being kind to ourselves.
Exactly. Recognizing that it's a process. There will be bumps along the way.
We'll mess up sometimes.
We will, but that's okay. And it's crucial to remember, we're not alone in this. Others have walked this path before us, and others are walking it with us right now.
That's actually really comforting to hear. Like, we're part of something bigger.
We are. That sense of connection, of belonging, it's one of the most powerful ways to combat the isolation that the Mysterium feeds on.
So it's not just about me waking up, it's about everyone waking up.
Precisely. As more individuals awaken, the collective consciousness shifts.
And then
it becomes easier for others to break free. It's a beautiful cycle.
like a ripple effect.
Exactly. Each person's awakening makes it easier for others to awaken too.
Wow.
And as the collective consciousness changes, it creates a more supportive environment for everyone to grow and transform.
It's like we're all lifting each other up.
That's a great way to put it. We're all in this together, even though each of us has our own unique path to walk.
That reminds me of that Jung quote again, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens.
Yes.
It sounds like looking inward is key to breaking free from this Mysterium.
Absolutely. Jung believed that to really know ourselves, we have to confront our shadow selves. The parts of us that we hide, that we deny.
Okay.
And that process, it can be tough, even painful sometimes.
So it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, it's not about reaching some perfect state. It's about embracing all of who we are, the good and the bad, the light and the shadow.
It makes sense. Life's messy.
It is.
We're not always going to feel happy and enlightened.
Nope, we're not. And it's important to acknowledge those difficult emotions, those darker parts of ourselves. Trying to push them away just makes them stronger.
Okay, this is all really insightful, but what about action? I mean, talking about awakening and connecting with ourselves is great, but how does that change anything in the real world?
That's a question Heidegger grappled with too.
Yeah.
He saw how Das Man, it could lead to inaction, just accepting things the way they are. He believed that true being requires us to engage with the world.
So how do we balance surrendering to the mystery with actually doing something, making a difference?
It's about finding that balance point, you know, between acceptance and action, between being present and striving for a better future.
I don't know. That sounds tricky. Can you say more about that?
It's about understanding that real change, it starts within us.
Okay.
Can't change the world until we change ourselves. But that inner transformation, it naturally flows outwards.
So it's not about forcing change. It's about letting our actions come from a place of, like, authenticity.
Exactly. From aligning our actions with our values, with our purpose.
Like, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Exactly. Gandhi said that, and it's so true. As we awaken, our actions naturally become more aligned with what we believe in, what we truly care about.
So it's not about fixing the world. It's about living the way we want the world to be.
You got it. It's about realizing that we're not separate from the world, we're a part of it. Our actions have a ripple effect. They influence everything around us.
It's a loop, right?
A feedback loop.
We act with awareness, with authenticity, with connection, and those qualities, they spread.
They do. And as they spread, they make it easier for even more awakening and transformation to happen. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense, but there's one thing that keeps nagging at me.
What's that?
The text. It talks about this age of catastrophe.
Yeah.
The thing that caused that split in our consciousness, the birth of the Mysterium. If this trauma is the root of the problem, how do we heal from it?
That's a crucial question. And I think the answer, it lies in this whole process we've been discussing.
This whole unlearning, connecting, waking up thing.
Exactly. As we dismantle the Mysterium, shed those layers of conditioning, reconnect with our true selves, we're also healing that original wound.
It's like tending a garden that's been neglected, right?
Beautiful analogy. It's about gently uncovering and caring for those parts of ourselves that have been hurt, ignored, or forgotten.
Like we're putting ourselves back together.
In a way, yes. We're reclaiming our wholeness.
That sounds so much better than fighting some epic battle against the Mysterium.
It's not about fighting, it's about healing. It's about realizing that the Mysterium is a part of us, a shadow aspect of our collective psyche. And instead of trying to wipe it out, we need to integrate it, to embrace it with compassion and understanding.
Okay, I'm getting it. But if I'm being honest, there's still this part of me that struggles with surrendering to the unknown. It's scary to let go of needing certainty.
I understand that. It's human nature to want certainty, to try to control things.
Yeah.
But the truth is, life is unpredictable.
No kidding.
You can't know what's going to happen next,
Nope.
and trying to control everything just leads to suffering.
So what do we do? How do we become okay with not knowing?
It's a process. It starts with realizing that uncertainty is just part of life.
Oh,
It's not something to fear, it's just how things are.
easier said than done, though.
True, but there are things that can help. Mindfulness meditation, for example, is great for learning to be present.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It helps you see your thoughts and emotions without judgment.
So it's about becoming more aware of what's going on inside us.
Yes, and as we become more aware, we can start to choose how we respond to things.
Instead of just reacting automatically.
Exactly. Instead of fear and anxiety, we can choose curiosity, openness.
Sounds much healthier. But what about when things feel really overwhelming? When it's hard to find peace?
That's when it's so important to reach out, to connect with others who are on a similar path, to remember that we're not alone.
We're all in this together.
We are.
Speaking of connection, we talked about the global village earlier and how it could lead to everyone being the same.
Right.
It seems like a real danger with social media and the internet.
It is a concern. The internet can connect people, but it can also spread misinformation and propaganda. It can be used to manipulate and control.
So how do we navigate all of that? How do we use technology wisely?
It takes a discerning mind. We have to be critical of the information we see online, question the narratives that are being pushed on us. We need to become more media literate, develop our own ability to judge what's true and what's not.
So not rejecting technology, but using it carefully.
Exactly. It's a tool. And like any tool, it could be used for good or bad. The choice is ours.
Whoa, this is a lot to take in. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this whole Mysterium thing.
We have, but that's the beauty of it, right? This journey of self-discovery, it's a lifelong process.
Always more to learn.
Always. It's an exploration of our inner and outer worlds.
Like peeling back layers of an onion only to find more layers underneath.
Exactly.
So just to recap, we've talked about the Mysterium, this split in our consciousness that messes with how we see reality. We explored the solution, dismantling it, waking up to who we really are.
Right.
And we touched on the steps involved. Self-awareness, connecting with nature, embracing the unknown, using technology wisely.
It's a lot.
It is. So where do we go from here?
I think it's time to face the elephant in the room. That line from the text, remember. The mind of man cannot possibly understand everything there is to know about its own nature.
Oh, yeah.
If we can never truly know ourselves,
Yeah.
then what are we actually awakening to?
That's a great question, and a perfect way to lead into the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we left off with this idea that the mind of man cannot possibly understand everything there is to know about its own nature.
Right? Heavy stuff.
I feel like that just opens up a whole other can of worms.
It does. It's like challenging this idea that we can figure out who we are just by thinking about it.
Yeah, like trying to bite your own teeth.
Exactly. There's this built-in limit to how we see ourselves. Maybe that's where this letting go thing comes in.
Letting go of what?
The need to understand everything perfectly, to have all the answers.
So not about knowing, but about being.
Yeah, that's it. It's about accepting the mystery. The stuff we'll never fully grasp.
That's a big shift in thinking.
It is. We're so used to wanting certainty, to defining everything.
To be in control.
And that's the Mysterium's trap, right? It promises us control, but it's all an illusion.
So instead of fighting against not knowing, we should just go with it.
Exactly. Trust the process, even when it feels weird or uncomfortable.
Okay.
Have faith in the journey, not just the destination.
This is making more sense now.
Yeah.
It's not about reaching some perfect state of enlightenment.
No.
It's about constantly getting rid of those layers of conditioning, those illusions that keep us separate from our true selves, from each other, from the natural world.
It's a lifelong journey, right?
No finish line.
No finish line. No point where you can say, okay, I'm done, I'm fully awakened.
So it's never over.
It's an ongoing process,
Ugh.
always evolving, always going deeper.
Wow.
It's like peeling an onion, one layer after another.
Speaking of layers and how everything's connected,
Yeah.
the source talked about the individual being the key to truth,
Right.
but also that we're all part of this bigger web of life. Isn't that contradictory?
Not really. It's a paradox. The individual journey and the collective awakening, they're intertwined. Can't have one without the other.
So as more people wake up, it becomes easier for others to wake up too.
Exactly. Like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Each person's awakening helps the collective awakening.
And the collective awakening helps the individual.
Yeah. It creates a better environment for everyone to grow and change.
That's beautiful. Like, we're all supporting each other, even though we're on our own paths.
It's about recognizing that shared journey, that feeling of belonging. It's the opposite of the isolation that the Mysterium thrives on.
That makes me think of that Jung quote again. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens.
I love that one.
It's like going inward is how we break free from this Mysterium.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Jung believed that to truly know ourselves, we got to face our shadows.
Shadows.
The parts of ourselves we hide, the stuff we don't want to look at.
Okay.
And that can be hard, even painful sometimes.
So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, like we said?
Nope. It's about embracing the whole thing, the good and the bad, the light and the dark.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We're not always going to be happy and enlightened.
Exactly. And trying to pretend those difficult emotions aren't there, it just makes them worse.
This is all great, but what about doing something? I mean, it's one thing to talk about waking up,
Right.
but how do we actually make a difference in the world?
Heidegger wrestled with that too. He saw how this Das man could lead to people not doing anything, just accepting how things are.
Just going with the flow, even if it's bad.
Yeah. And he felt that to truly be, to exist authentically, we have to engage with the world, not just sit back.
So how do we balance accepting things as they are with trying to change them?
That's the key, right? Finding that balance between acceptance and action, between being present and wanting a better future.
Oh, no, that sounds hard.
It is. It's about recognizing that real change starts within us.
Okay, I get that.
We can't change the world if we don't change ourselves first. But once that inner transformation happens, it naturally leads to action.
So it's not about forcing change on the world. It's about changing ourselves and letting that change flow outwards.
Exactly. It's about being the change, like we were saying. As we wake up, our actions become more aligned with what we believe in, what we truly value.
It's like we become living examples of the change we want to see.
Exactly. It's recognizing that we're not separate from the world, we're part of it. What we do matters. It has an impact.
So our actions create ripples.
Yeah, like a feedback loop. We act with awareness, authenticity, connection, and those qualities spread.
And then
And then they make it easier for even more positive change to happen. It builds on itself.
this is all clicking now. But there's still this one thing bugging me.
What is it?
The text, it mentions this age of catastrophe.
The trauma.
The thing that caused the split in our consciousness, the birth of the Mysterium. If that trauma is the root cause, how do we heal from it?
That's the big question, right? And I think the answer is in this whole process we've been talking about.
Unlearning, connecting, waking up, all of it.
All of it.
Mm.
By dismantling the Mysterium, shedding those layers of conditioning, reconnecting with who we truly are, we're also healing that old wound.
It's like we're slowly tending to a garden that's been neglected for a long time.
I like that. It's about gently uncovering and nurturing those parts of ourselves that have been hurt, ignored, or forgotten.
Putting ourselves back together piece by piece.
Yeah, reclaiming our wholeness.
That's a much better image than battling some big, scary Mysterium.
It's not about fighting. It's about recognizing that the Mysterium is a part of us, a shadow that needs to be integrated, not destroyed,
To be understood.
and embraced with compassion.
Okay, I'm starting to really understand this. But I have to admit, the whole surrendering to the unknown thing, it's still tough for me. I want certainty. I want to know what's going to happen.
I get it, it's a natural instinct, but the truth is, life is uncertain. We can't control everything, and trying to just creates more suffering.
So how do we get comfortable with not knowing?
It's a process. We start by recognizing that uncertainty is just a fact of life, not something to be afraid of.
Okay.
And there are practices that can help, like mindfulness meditation.
Right.
It helps you learn to be present, to just observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
So it's about paying attention to what's going on inside us without freaking out about it.
Exactly. And the more aware we become, the more we can choose how we respond to things. Instead of fear and anxiety, we can choose curiosity and openness.
That sounds a lot better than panicking.
It is, but there will be times when it feels overwhelming, when it's hard to find peace.
What do we do then?
Reach out, connect with others who get it, remind yourself that you're not alone, we're all in this together.
Speaking of connection and how everything's related, we talked about the global village before, how it could lead to everyone being the same.
Yeah, a world of copies.
And with social media and the internet, it seems like that's a real danger.
It is. The internet can be great for connecting people, but it can also spread bad information, propaganda, things designed to manipulate and control.
So how do we use technology wisely without falling into those traps?
It takes critical thinking. We have to question the information we see online, not just accept everything at face value. We need to become more media savvy, develop our own sense of what's true and what's not.
So being smart about how we use technology, not just rejecting it outright.
Exactly. It's a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. We get to choose.
Man, this is a lot to process. It feels like we've only just started to explore this whole Mysterium thing.
We have, but that's what makes it so fascinating. This journey of self-discovery, it never really ends.
Always more to uncover.
Always. It's an exploration of both our inner and outer worlds.
Like peeling an onion, finding more layers underneath every time.
That's a great way to put it. It keeps things interesting.
Okay, so to recap, we talked about the problem, the Mysterium, this split in our consciousness that distorts how we see things.
Right, like a broken lens.
We explored the solution, which is to dismantle it and wake up to who we really are.
And heal that old wound.
And we talked about the steps involved. Self-awareness, connecting with nature, embracing the unknown, using technology wisely. So where do we go from here?
I think it's time to address the elephant in the room. Remember that line from the text? The mind of man cannot possibly understand everything there is to know about its own nature. If we can never fully know ourselves, then what are we even awakening to?
That's a good question and a perfect way to move into the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we're left with this big question. If our minds can't fully grasp their own nature, what are we actually awakening to when we dismantle this Mysterium thing? It's like, what's the point if there's always going to be more we don't know?
That's a question that's been around for ages. Philosophers, mystics, they've all wrestled with it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no easy answer. But maybe that's okay, you know?
How so?
Maybe it's not about finding some perfect understanding of ourselves or the universe. And maybe it's more about the journey itself, like constantly peeling back layers, uncovering new depths of experience.
It's like we're not looking for a destination, but for the experience of traveling.
I like that. It reminds me of something we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That Taoist idea of wu-wei, effortless action, non-doing. It's about aligning ourselves with how life naturally flows, not trying to force things or control everything.
So letting go of that need for certainty, for control, trusting that we're being guided even when we don't get why.
Exactly. And cultivating a sense of curiosity and openness to whatever comes up, even the tough stuff. Because often it's in those moments of uncertainty and discomfort that we learn and grow the most.
So instead of trying to figure it all out, we just lean into the mystery, allow ourselves to be surprised.
That's the spirit. It's about recognizing that there's always more to learn, more to experience, and that the journey itself is the reward.
Yeah.
And it's not a solo trip either. We're all connected in ways we might not even fully grasp.
Speaking of connection, it strikes me that a lot of what we've talked about today kind of challenges those deep-seated beliefs about being self-reliant, you know? Individualistic, like Das Man is all about chasing external validation, but the solution seems to be about going inward, trusting our own intuition. It's a shift from me to we.
That's a sharp observation. The Mysterium, with its focus on separation and control, definitely pushes a very individualistic perspective. But dismantling it, it's about recognizing how interconnected we are, that we're part of something way bigger. It's about realizing that our well-being is tied to the well-being of everyone and everything else.
So it's not just about personal change, but also social and environmental change.
Absolutely. As we wake up to who we really are, we naturally become more compassionate, more empathetic, more in tune with the needs of others and the planet. And that shifting consciousness can ripple outwards, creating positive change on a larger scale.
Like Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. By embodying those qualities, awareness, authenticity, connection, We become catalysts for a better world.
Exactly. It's not about forcing our will on the world, but about aligning ourselves with those forces of love, compassion, and understanding that are already at play, and trusting that even the small acts of kindness and courage can make a real difference.
Well, after this deep dive, I'm feeling a mix of awe and excitement, but also a sense of responsibility. It's like I've been given this map to a better way of being, but it's up to me to actually walk the path. No
Right.
pressure, right?
That's beautifully put. And remember, you don't have to walk it alone. There are so many others who are already on this path and many more who are just waking up. Reach out, connect, share your experiences, support each other. We're all in this together.
This whole conversation has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I have a whole new lens on the challenges we face, both personally and collectively, and I feel hopeful, like a better world is truly possible.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. There will be twists and turns and always more to discover.
So, to our listener, if you've made it this far, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Mysterium and what it means for how we see ourselves and the world. What stands out to you from all this?
The text mentions that the mind of man cannot possibly understand everything there is to know about its own nature. It makes you wonder, if our minds are a product of nature, does that mean nature itself has limits to its understanding? Something to think about as you continue your own journey.
That's a great point to leave us with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deeper into the mysteries of life.